There was a pecking order in the Holy Land. Those from Jerusalem and Judah considered themselves ethnically pure, more religiously correct, enlightened, and sophisticated. And they thought of those up north in Galilee as bumpkins, more transient, Gentiles less enlightened in a land of darkness. They refer to Galilee somewhat like people in Chicago refer to downstate. It is not a compliment. Will it play in Peoria? It is in this context that the writer of Matthew begins his narrative of the ministry of Jesus. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. Being in Galilee was like sitting in the dark. In another account, the question is posed, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Now, when we think of those struggling in darkness, we tend to think of that as a situation of the whole humanity, of the whole human family. We all struggle in darkness, and Jesus, the light of the world, is the light of the whole world, has come to us. That's what Epiphany is all about. The light of Christ, thanks be to God. Christ for the world, we sing. But in the context in Matthew today, that land of darkness is referring to a particularly benighted area, a backwater, an area worthy of derision. The common take from this passage of Jesus calling disciples is for us to consider how Jesus is calling each one of us to God's mission, calling us to join with him in mission to do God's work in the world, leave our boats behind and fish for people. I will make you fishers of men if you follow me. That was a Sunday school song I sang. Take up a higher calling. It's a good message to those who may have lower expectations for themselves. You can be part of a cosmic journey with Christ, and all of this is worthy and true. What I want to talk about today is a smaller piece of this, is to consider what it means when we regard whole groups of people with disdain, regions of a nation, categories of people. What does it do to those who hold others in contempt? And what does it do to those held in contempt? What does it do to their self-understanding when people think of you that way? As one who lives in Iowa, I know what it's like to be the butt of the joke on late-night television. When once every 4 years we have the Iowa caucus and have televised interview of men in plaid shirts sitting on hay bales and looking quaint. And there is deep pondering and angst about if Iowa folks are getting more than our fair share of attention. When we first moved to this area from California, my wife, Nancy, remembers having conversation with local people. Why would you move here? And after talking a little bit about affordable housing or a job opportunity or better education for our girls, replying with some exasperation, well, you live here, there must be something you like. Friends, we live in flyover America in the view of some people. For some who hold this characterization, it diminishes the importance of what we think and what we do. They write off our significance, and for some of us, we buy into this and it lowers our self-esteem and it causes us to be reactive, spiteful, and mean. For others, we know better. And we know that, by golly, we're as good as anybody and capable and knowledgeable, and we resolve to do our best to play our part and to do it with integrity. When 4 years ago I posted pictures on Facebook of the caucus at our local elementary school, California friends marveled at face-to-face democracy with neighbors in action. And that, if you will, is the edge those who are regarded as objects of derision face, whether to be spiteful or whether to double down on integrity and resolve. One theologian, Oscar Coleman, analyzes the name given to the fishermen in the Bible and suggests that they were not so simple as frequently regarded, but rather revolutionaries who wanted to burn the place down. And I find his analysis at least plausible. But Jesus saw in them what they did not even see in themselves. Jesus called out their positive potential. He regarded them as beloved children of God, what we are all called to be in our baptism. Jesus treated them with dignity and respect and called these underemployed fishers to something higher, the realm of God. Jesus calls them and us to something even higher than our best selves. Jesus calls us to be partners with him and with God in the remaking of the world. Jesus saw them as real people. Some of those who have been derided, some call those who have been derided to be spiteful. Others see us as real people and offer us a higher calling. It can go either way. It would be a shame to preach a whole sermon and not at least refer to the experience Steve and Judy and Carol and I had at the southern border of Mexico this last week or so. We met with migrants en route seeking a better life and held in contempt by many. We met with Rosalino, who has a claim for asylum, fleeing machete violence in his hometown in Guatemala, who made it to the U.S. border and has been returned to Mexico to await a hearing on February the 3rd in El Paso, Texas. We listened with respect to his story, and we are seeking to guide him to resources which can assist him with his claim. We met with a tearful English-speaking woman from Cameroon who flew to Ecuador and literally walked through the jungle of the Darien Gap. She is fleeing violence in a civil war in her nation. Our contribution was to listen to and talk with her in English because she feels so terribly alone in a migrant shelter where only Spanish is spoken. We met with a Cuban woman whose father was a part of the resistance in Cuba and is therefore blacklisted in many ways and fleeing. Our contribution was to regard these people as children of God, listen with respect, and accord them proper dignity. We did not classify them as objects of derision or folks unworthy of human dignity. One woman in particular who inspired me is Myra, who lives in Chamique, down by the border. Nancy and I met her about 10 years ago in San Cristobal de las Casas. Since then, she has started and now runs a center for women who are being sexually trafficked and stuck at the Guatemala-Mexico border. She provides a route to safety and a way out of prostitution, a safe place to stay, and a chance to work for money to get them out of their dire situation. Myra is one who has responded yes to Jesus' call to discipleship. She has said yes to partnership with God. Jesus calls us to be disciples. Jesus does not call us to be spiteful. Amen and amen.